Hello, welcome to episode 141 of the Epic Film Challenge 2, 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, Modern Times from 1936. The second Chaplin film we'll be covering in the Epic Film Challenge 2. So kind of working backwards from Monsieur Verdot to 1936, which is Chaplin's last silent film, which if you know anything about silent films you know that's quite odd because by 1930-31 sound films had pretty much completely taken over the entire movie industry. So by 1936 he was still kind of holding on to the last vestiges of what had made him one of the biggest stars in the world from, you know, like 1916, 17 onwards throughout the 20s. I'd seen this film before, Connie hadn't, and I guess over the past year or so I've kind of gotten you into Chaplin films a little bit. Slowly but surely, with films like The Kid, Limelight, The Great Dictator, which we famously reviewed for this series before realizing it wasn't in the book. But we'll leave that where that was. Modern Times sees Chaplin give his last performance as his little tramp persona, you know, with the hat and the cane and everything, again, that made him such a huge star. And his thinking behind making the film silent was that he felt like the appeal of his little tramp character to the public would be diminished if they heard him speak. He thought the charm was in the silent part of that. But in Modern Times we do hear voices, and it's usually to do with, in the opening sequence of the film, where we see him working in a factory. And that's what the film's about. It's about industrialization encroaching on society today in the 30s, where all these machines were coming in, factory work was coming in, and machines were taking over, but then the jobs were being lost as well. So it's kind of like a commentary on that and how, you know, oh, this is a great new era, you know, of industrialization, and yet, you know, there's still poverty and there's still people struggling. And the female lead of the character is this. She's just like a homeless, you know. Well, she's not homeless, but she becomes homeless, and she just dressed like in rags, and so it's very much about poverty and things like that, and again, commentary on the industrialization, modern times. And in the beginning in the factory we see the head of the factory speaking through like an intercom system, which again, a bit like Metropolis, is kind of fantasy almost, because you wouldn't have had that back in the 30s. And you hear his voice. So you hear voices on recordings. They bring in a gramophone and you hear like instructions. So it's interesting how he used sound, and then at the end of the film you hear him sing this kind of nonsense song in like French and Italian and English and stuff.
Yeah,
and
we did hear his voice.
so it was all building up to this kind of last moment, and so this film is very much the last hurrah of you know, this iconic character in film history, which was the Little Tramp, as it was known. Anyway, the plot, you know, follows him kind of going out of work in the factory. At the beginning of the film he goes insane over just the monotony of working in a factory, and he just has a nervous breakdown, so they send him off, and then he gets put in prison through a series of mishaps, and then he starts enjoying prison, so whenever he gets out of prison he wants to go back, and then he meets this girl played by Paulette, Goddard, who was, I'm not sure if she was his wife at the time, but they were definitely seeing each other at the time. She'd go on to be his wife, and she's great in the film, and you were commenting on how modern she looked.
It was so refreshing because most of the silent movies we've seen are from the 20s.
Yeah.
And they all the girls look the same with that little lipstick, like making their lips look smaller, and like perky in a way.
The kind of flapper hairstyle and.
Yeah, but she just looked like she could fit in.
Oh yeah.
In these times, and she's very like just naturally pretty to look at, you know. And she kind of reminded me of Rey from Star Wars as well, with the way she looked and her attitude. Like she seemed so down to earth, and like she was taking care of herself, and she was kind of like, you know, she didn't take any bullshit and stuff.
Yeah.
She like a strong female.
Yeah.
Lead in the movie.
Definitely, yeah.
It's different from the other movies because usually they have to be helped and stuff. But she didn't want any help, but then she, you know. And
again, this is moving into the late 30s at this point, so I mean, it's all that fashion had gone, but yet it's still a silent film. You know, it's weird. It's this weird kind of. I mean, it still happened. You know, all the way up until now. We have The Artist. People still did silent films afterwards, but it really was, I suppose, in 1936 uncommon. You know, but Chaplin was still holding on to it, I suppose. I think the last one he did before that was in 1930 as well, which is another silent film. So It took him 10 years, really, or 10 plus years, to get to a proper sound film with The Great Dictator. Anyway, what do you think of the film Modern Times?
I think I remember saying that I found it a little bit slow in the beginning, a little repetitive, because this whole factory thing went on for a bit long.
Quite a big sequence of him in the factory, kind of like fastening bolts and stuff, and like loads of like visual gags, obviously.
But it was like the same joke over and over again for me.
Yeah.
Like, it was funny the first time, but then it was repeated like 4 or 5 times after.
I think in that sense he builds on the gag each time it's repeated, but I do understand what you mean.
Yeah.
I do get
Of course it gets more extreme, but it's like, it would have been better if it hadn't gone on for that long. Like, nowadays they would have definitely cut that short.
What I found quite funny was revolving around him, he's got these 2 wrenches and he's like fastening 2 bolts, and his hands won't stop. And so he sees a woman with 2 like bolt-shaped buttons on the back of her dress, and so he starts tightening them. Then he runs outside, and this woman comes up, and she's got these 2 bolt-shaped pins on where her nipples would be.
Yeah.
He's chasing her down the street, and you're like, oh my god, what's he going to do if he catches up with her? That was quite funny.
Yeah. And also like that thing, that invention that those people had invented. Like, that was... that also I found like a little dragged out. And then he gets out, or he gets put into some psychiatric thing, but it just cuts straight to him coming out from that, you know, telling him to take it easy.
Yeah.
And then he gets when he gets put into prison, that's when I started really liking it. Like, up until then, I was like, oh, this is a little bit disappointing.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I just felt like he was trying too hard by repeating and repeating his dad jokes, you know? Like,
right.
It was funny the first time, I'm going to tell it again. It was funny the second time, I'm going to tell it again.
Like my dad.
Yes. So, well, any dad, really, telling a joke, you know? And so, when he got into prison and things started happening there, things got funny. There was a lot more variation. It didn't repeat everything. And when he started meeting up with, what's her name?
She was called the Gamin or the Gamin. I don't know how you pronounce it. I don't know what it means.
Real name?
Just Paulette Goddard, I believe is her name.
So when he met her, that's when things got different.
Yeah.
I really liked their chemistry, which obviously was good if they were involved.
You could tell that there was a spark between them.
And I like it more looking back now, because I now know that he wrote the song Smile.
Right.
Which is a very famous song. Luke didn't know this. But I didn't know that Charlie Chaplin wrote it, because I've heard it sung by so many people.
I don't think he wrote the lyrics. I'm not quite sure.
The whole thing is...
The melody.
I'm sure he wrote the lyrics, because I read the lyrics, and something that he would write.
I'm sure I read that the lyrics of someone else, but either way, I mean, he composed the music for the film.
Yeah, and the music is beautiful, and I just like how it's about them, you know?
Sure, yeah.
And then the rest of it is entertaining.
Yeah, there's a lot of good gags in there.
She was the best, though.
Yeah, she's kind of the highlight of the film.
She is the highlight.
One of my favourite. I mean, again, it's like a Chaplin. It's a series of gags, you know, with a story, and usually he makes the story quite poignant and meaningful. But you're still watching a film that's mostly comprised of gags. And one of my favourites was when he gets a job at being a night watchman at a department store. And he puts some roller skates on and he's skating around and he puts blindfolds on, and there's this huge drop that goes right down through the department store, and he says...
Was that really him?
Yeah, it's really him.
Skate that one?
And you can see him going right across the edge, backwards and stuff. And I've seen this image that shows you how they did it, and it was like a plate with like a painting, you know, to kind of show the drop down. So it wasn't a real drop down, but it looks great. You can kind of tell it's painted, but I mean, just a really nice technical achievement for that scene.
I didn't see that at all. But you see it because you knew.
Well, I didn't see it the first time I watched it. The first time I watched it, I thought that he probably did that for real. You know, because you think about Buster Keaton and Chaplin, and they would do those kinds of daring things. But afterwards, I saw how they did it, which was really interesting.
He jumps into not the ocean, but like
It's
some kind of water, and it's not very deep. But he properly like dives in,
head first.
and it's like that deep.
Yeah, the gag is that the water's very shallow, so he just goes right on his head.
Yeah, and I was just saying like they would hire stunt people for that nowadays.
Yes, they would.
Never let the actor do that.
Yeah,
and it's just a simple dive, but he does it so well.
It's a bygone era which you could never go back to. I mean, well, I guess I think the person who probably kind of flirts with it the most these days. Jackie Chan, but also Tom Cruise. If you're looking at the big scale, you know, where he will kind of hang off the side of a plane as it's taking off and stuff like that. But it really is a bygone time for that, because it's so dangerous. It's so, I mean, literally, like, Buster Keaton could have died so many times doing some of the stuff that he did. And again, I think what's really impressive is that this is really a Chaplin film. Like, he is such an auteur of everything. He did the writing, came up with the story, directed the film, starred in the film, did the stunts, and you know, all that kind of stuff. The choreography, probably the music he composed. It's crazy how much of a imprint he has on most of his films that he made.
I think the music seemed like it fit very well throughout the whole thing. But again, I like how the theme for him and Paulette, the Smile song.
Yeah.
It's just
really nice song.
Yeah, it is.
I'm trying to think if there was anything else really. An interesting note is that in one of the prison scenes there's a gag. The officers are looking for some, I guess, cocaine or, you know, an equivalent, and and then there's a gag with a crook putting some cocaine into a salt thing, and so Chaplin pours some onto his thing and he's like, I'm gonna let it all go up his nose and stuff, and then he's like, ooh, fucking hell, like that. And that was quite again, out of the ordinary kind of thing to do at the time, because you weren't allowed, I guess, by law to kind of depict illegal drug use. So he seemed to just kind of get away with that. Apparently that was quite a risque thing to do at the time. Anything else really? I mean, we're not just going to sit here and just talk about all of the different gags really, because there's so many of them. But I think it's a sweet story with some funny moments. It's not my favourite Chaplin film. I know it's considered one of the all-time, you know, great Chaplin films or silent films.
Yeah, I like Limelight better. Is that in the book?
It's not in the book, no. But yeah,
I don't get it. Clueless.
Yes, Clueless is in the book, but Limelight isn't. I don't get it.
Or The Great Dictator.
Oh, The Great Dictator. But
what's wrong with this
I mean, I think apart from The Great Dictator, Limelight, and The Circus, I think all of his main silent films are in there. Maybe not A Woman of Paris.
The
Kid is in there. Yeah, it must be. I hope it is. We'll get to that at some point. I know The Gold Rush is definitely in there at least, and City Lights, but and we'll get to those. But yeah, which you haven't seen, yeah, and I'm really looking forward to watching them with you because they're great films. But yeah, this one is one of my least favorites, I think, but I still really enjoy it. I think it's a great film. Is it a film you should see before you die? What do you reckon?
I mean,
you don't have to give it a pass just because it's a Chaplin film.
No, well, kind of, because
right.
it's like, because it's Chaplin, you should watch it.
That is a good point. I think that's where I would kind of settle my decision. It's a yes for me. I don't think it's like the greatest masterpiece or anything, but like I think that all of his films are so special, at least the ones I've seen, and so you kind of need to see all of them, you know. So I think that kind of plays into it. It's and again, it's the last of this, you know, the little Tramp. I mean, he was one of the biggest stars of the entire world, you know, in the 1910s when he first became big. It was huge. You know, the money he was making, signing these big contracts, making these films, he was just, and that iconic image of that with the mustache, the hat, the stick, and this was the last ever time that I guess he kind of brought it back a little bit in Limelight, kind of, but I mean, it really, the last kind of silent, you know, version of that. And it's kind of it's an important film in film history, I think, for that.
I think I liked it better than The Dictator.
Yeah, well...
Because The Dictator is very long.
But yeah, well...
And it's... I don't know. I actually do think that I liked it better. If I take away from how long the beginning kept going on about the same thing... Can I just say, and The Dictator is not a silent movie, but this one had so much sound in it, I feel like I didn't watch a silent movie. Yeah,
there's like sound effects and things as well.
Yeah, I felt like I was watching mute people really playing the movie, kind of a little bit. And then he suddenly sung.
Yeah.
But the best thing about The Dictator was the speech, obviously.
Yes,
and that's what makes it such a great movie
Yeah.
for me. If the speech wasn't in there, I would put it at the bottom of the Chaplin movies so
right,
far.
right, yeah, yeah.
But it's so famous for its speech, and that's why it's a movie you should see before
Yeah.
you die, because you need to know where that speech
Sure.
came from. This movie, however, I've never heard about. The only thing from it that I feel is so famous that makes it worth really watching is the song. Kind of. I really, really like that. That's where the song originated from. And Paulette, she was just so great.
Yeah, she's brilliant.
I want to watch it again at some point, and then maybe I'll have a more clear answer. But
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
like on a maybe.
Yeah.
But I liked it better than The Dictator.
Yeah, I was gonna add that if you take the speech out of The Great Dictator, it's an easy prefer this one over that.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure on that really. I think I probably would prefer the Great Dictator, but I think this is a great film, and the relationship between the two, it's just a really simple, sweet one. You know, it's not really overblown, and you know how I love you and all that. It's just a sweet relationship between these two people who are very much just trying to get along in modern times, where
They don't
like
even kiss, do they?
No, they don't even kiss in the film. Spoilers. And
Sorry.
No, it's fine. And yeah, it's a very, very sweet film. Yeah, it is a film you should see before you die for me. And another thing, just to kind of throw in a little bit more to make it a bit more level, to go along with the criticism about things dragging on, there's a scene where he's a waiter and he's trying to get this duck to this guy who's like, "Where's my duck?" And so he's holding it, and the crowd comes, and so he's going around the crowd. And he's getting dragged around, and it's funny, but it goes on for about 30 seconds too long, and it's like, we kind of get the joke. I mean, like.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that he could have cut short, and then it would have really elevated the movie.
But then we are used to more modern comedies and stuff, and this is a long time ago, and with the silent era, those jokes would get milked for maybe a bit too long. Anyway,
I think it's kind of like he keeps it on until people stop laughing, and then he moves on. It's almost like it's been
milk it for all it's
that
worth.
way.
Yeah.
It's like when people go.
Right.
And then it's like, all right, let's go on to the next joke,
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
yeah.
We talked about this for quite a while. I mean, with Chaplin, there's a lot to talk about, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, very good film.
I want to say though, I one of my favorite moments was when he was imagining what their house would look like.
Great scene. Yeah, they're sat outside this kind of nuclear family house, with like a woman kissing goodbye to her husband as he goes off to work with his lunch, and they're like, oh, wouldn't it be funny to imagine us in a house like that? And we get this dream sequence.
Yeah.
And it's really funny, just the little details he'd put in there, like
the apple tree
Yeah.
is actually sticking inside of the window, and he just grabs an apple.
It's fun.
I really, really like that scene.
It was a fun scene. It was kind of like spoofing the image of the kind of the happy home life, and kind of taking the piss out of it a little bit, which is fun.
Yeah.
So there you go. Modern Times. Definitely film you should see before you die from me. Maybe from you. And yeah, we'll see
Well,
you.
yeah, I guess.
I guess.
If you, it's a definite yes for the Chaplin movies. That you
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to see
yeah.
it. No doubt about that. But yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.